Japan, once heralded as an unstoppable economic powerhouse, has faced significant challenges in recent decades. The country's journey is a fascinating narrative of unprecedented growth, followed by formidable challenges that have had a profound impact on its economy and society. From the rapid growth of the post-war era to the bursting of the economic bubble and the impact of an aging population, this video delves into Japan's economic transformation and the lessons we can learn from its journey. Let's look back at the Japanese economy before the blow of World War II. The era between 1870 and 1940 reflects Japan's GDP per capita growth and its economic success during that period. Statistics show that Japan was steadily catching up with Britain and the United States, two of the world's most advanced industrial economies. In 1870, Japan's GDP per capita was 23% of Britain's and 30% of America's. Still, by the eve of the Pacific War, it had grown to 42% of Britain's and 41% of America's. However, all of this went south when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941, marking the entry of the United States into World War II.
Have witnessed this morning the distant view, the Battle of Pearl Harbor.
I ask that the Congress declare a state of war has existed between the United States and the Japanese Empire.
Japan formally entered World War II on September 22, 1940, when it invaded French Indochina and subsequently formed an alliance with Germany and Italy. Considering that Japan was rapidly becoming one of the most innovative and up-and-coming nations of its time, World War II abruptly reversed this progress and sent the modern Japanese economy back to its starting point, erasing almost all the gains it had made since the end of the 19th century. In wartime, over 1 million Japanese children were relocated from urban areas to the comparatively safer rural areas, leading to the separation of families. Beginning in 1940, there was widespread rationing and food shortages throughout the country. Although precise figures are uncertain, by 1945, after the war, an estimated 3% of the Japanese population, which is over 2 million individuals, had perished. Emperor Hirohito announced Japan's surrender on August 14, 1945, 1 week after the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, which claimed more than 200,000 lives. The United States further retaliated due to the attack on Pearl Harbor, creating further difficulties for Japan. Specifically, Japan's steel industry had been reduced by 93%. Over 30% of its industrial machinery was destroyed, a quarter of its national buildings and structures were damaged, and over 80% of its ships were lost. In addition, the major urban areas of Japan lay in ruins. The gross national product had collapsed, the yen was virtually worthless, and Japanese citizens were impoverished. Japan's GDP per capita in 1945, when it surrendered in World War II, amounted to $1,346, which is only 11% of the U.S. equivalent for that year, and just 47% of Japan's per capita income in 1940, the year before it entered World War II. Additionally, in 1946, Japan was close to experiencing a widespread famine that was prevented only by American food aid. The severe decline in the Japanese standard of living, along with the military threat from the Soviet Union, led the United States to provide extensive economic assistance for Japan's recovery. In the immediate aftermath of the war, efforts were directed towards rebuilding the industrial capacity that had been lost. The period from 1945 to 1991, known as the Japanese economic miracle, marked a time of rapid and sustained economic growth in Japan. In less than 10 years, Japan's economy grew at a rate comparable to the peak rate observed in 1939, expanding twice as fast as the pre-war standard annually after 1955. Japan only achieved such high growth rates through its economic reforms and international help. Significant investments were allocated to electric power, coal, steel, and chemicals. By the mid-1950s, production had returned to pre-war levels. With the military influence and governance dwindling, the economy regained its lost momentum and exceeded the growth rates of previous periods. From 1953 to 1965, the GDP grew by over 9% annually. Manufacturing and mining by 13%, construction by 11%, and infrastructure by 12%. The once devastated Japanese economy swiftly emerged from the aftermath of World War II. In 1956, GDP per capita had surpassed the pre-war 1940 level. During the recovery period, 1945 and 56, GDP per capita increased at an average annual rate of 7.1%. This recovery was then followed by a period of rapid growth. Japan started catching up with the West once again, and at a pace that far exceeded its progress before the war. In 1965, these sectors employed over 41% of the labor force, while only 26% remained in agriculture. Japan's rapid recovery from war trauma was partly due to successful economic reforms implemented by the government. The Ministry of International Trade and Industry was Japan's primary government body, responsible for industrial policy. One of the significant economic reforms was the adoption of the incline production mode, which focused on the production of raw materials such as steel, coal, and cotton. Textile production accounted for over 23.9% of the total industrial production. Additionally, the Japanese government encouraged women to enter the labor market to stimulate growth further. The second reason for Japan's rapid recovery from World War II was the outbreak of the Korean War. The conflict was fought in an area that had been part of Chosen, the territory which was formerly annexed by the Empire of Japan until 1945. Since the United States was involved in the Korean War, they turned to the Japanese economy for equipment and supplies, as shipping these from the United States became a logistical issue for the military. Japan's industry quickly provided the required munitions and logistics to the American forces in Korea, which stimulated the Japanese economy. This led to its rapid recovery from the devastation of the Pacific War and set the foundation for the subsequent rapid expansion. After receiving support from the United States and implementing domestic economic reforms, Japan's economy experienced rapid growth from the 1950s to the 1970s. Additionally, Japan completed its industrialization process and became the first developed nation in East Asia. Then, in 1968, Japan was recognized as the world's second largest economy, a status it maintained until it was overtaken by China in 2010. Government policies that fostered industrial growth and technological progress played a pivotal role. Japan's focus on quality management and ongoing improvement further enhanced its global competitiveness. During the 1980s, Japan was at the forefront of various sectors, including automotive and consumer electronics, and was renowned for its substantial trade surplus and prosperity. The economy grew at an average annual rate of 3.89% in the 1980s, compared to 3.07% in the United States as measured by GDP. Things could not get better for the Japanese economy. Japan's unemployment and inflation rates steadily decreased, while foreign reserves were growing rapidly. The country has also emerged as a global leader in technological advancement, making it a go-to source for tech needs across the world. In addition, the standard of living in Japan surpassed that of most other countries. People were enjoying longer lifespans, almost non-existent infant mortality, low crime rates, and a remarkably equitable distribution of wealth. After enjoying many years of these incredible conditions, things started to go wrong for Japan. In the mid-80s, companies became stupendously wealthy, and that's when the international buying spree began. You see, companies had simply way too much money. The appreciation of the yen significantly impacted Japanese exporters in 1986 and 1987. In response, the Bank of Japan implemented an extensive monetary easing program. This resulted in excessive investment in real estate and led to a bubble economy. While some people were concerned, most enjoyed the economic prosperity. Real estate values in the Japanese stock market were soaring, but these were not sustainable due to unsound economic practices. The bubble burst after reaching its peak in 1988 and 1989. By 1990, the Nikkei index had dropped to half of its 1989 peak, marking the end of Japan's economic miracle and the beginning of Japan's economic stagnation. More commonly referred to as the lost decades, Japan experienced a prolonged period of economic stagnation caused by the collapse of the asset price bubble beginning in 1990. From 1991 to 2003, Japan's GDP grew at an annual rate of only 1.14%, well below that of other industrialized nations. The average real growth rate between 2000 and 2010 was about 1%. By the year 2000, Japan was experiencing the challenge of a growing number of post-war baby boomer workers retiring. At the same time, due to the stagnant population growth, fewer young people were joining the workforce. Japan experienced a significant economic downturn in the late 1980s, with equity values dropping 60% from 1989 to 1992 and land values falling 70% by 2001. Now, a popular reason for the economic downfall is the Plaza Accord. The Plaza Accord, signed in 1985, was an agreement among major economies to devalue the American dollar. This resulted in a rapid appreciation of the yen. This historic agreement, signed at the Plaza Hotel in New York City, involved what was then known as the G5 nations: West Germany, France, the United States, Japan, and the United Kingdom. Its purpose was to compel the United States to devalue its currency due to a current account deficit, which was estimated to be around 3% of GDP, according to paragraph 6 of the Accords. This was especially crucial as European nations and Japan faced significant current account surpluses and negative GDP growth, which threatened external trade and GDP growth in their home nations. The dollar had become too strong, and the five nations believed it would benefit everyone if it were to weaken somewhat. They collaboratively devised a straightforward strategy. The United States would permit the dollar to depreciate by implementing more relaxed policies and emphasizing economic expansion. Meanwhile, export-oriented countries such as Germany and Japan would concentrate on stimulating domestic demand for goods and bolstering their respective currencies. The plan was successful, especially for Japan. Japan also became less reliant on the United States and instead began trading with its East Asian neighbors. However, this decision would ultimately lead to Japan's downfall. During this time, yen continued to appreciate, adversely affecting Japan's export-heavy industries. A stronger currency meant that Japanese goods became more expensive for customers abroad, decreasing demand. The Japanese government implemented tax cuts to address this issue and injected large amounts of money into the economy through stimulus packages. They aimed to stimulate domestic spending to offset the anticipated export loss due to the strong yen. However, easy access to credit led to excessive spending and speculative behavior. Corporations invested in land and large properties, causing the real estate market to expand rapidly. Additionally, rampant speculation in the stock market further contributed to market inflation. The stock market doubled 2 years before its peak, and Japan's economy grew at 5% annually. This rapid growth, however, was unsustainable. The Japanese government realized the situation too late and only began raising interest rates in late 1989. As a result, credit became less accessible, leading to a decline in speculation, a fall in real estate prices, a plummeting stock market, and a significant slowdown in corporate investment. By January 1990, the economic bubble had burst, and Japan's economic growth had reached a standstill. Furthermore, like the rest of the world, Japan was severely affected by the global economic recession that commenced at the end of 2007 and took a firm hold in 2008. Between 1995 and 2023, Japan's GDP decreased from $5.33 trillion to $4.21 trillion in nominal terms. Real wages fell by approximately 11%, and the country experienced stagnant or decreasing price levels, which broadly impacted the entire Japanese economy. To put things in perspective further, COVID-19 further damaged the already decreasing Japanese economy. In early April, Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe announced a state of emergency, giving the nation its worst economic crisis since the end of World War II. The COVID-19 shock in early 2020 triggered a significant recession, with real GDP projected to shrink by around 5.2% this year. The economy is gradually strengthening, although growth remains sluggish. Before we get into the last part of the video, make sure to check out the link in the description for my best recommendation when it comes to further expanding our knowledge on a more personal scale. Fast forward to 2023, the Japanese economy faced much more significant challenges. After a 3.2% decline in GDP in the third quarter, the country narrowly avoided a recession with a modest 0.4% growth in the last quarter. Weak household and government consumption were notable, but there was a rebound in business investment. Despite these challenges, exports grew strongly due to a weak exchange rate. As a result, Japan slid from being the world's third largest economy to the fourth, trailing the United States, China, and now Germany, mainly due to a substantial depreciation of the yen. So far, the Japanese economy has shown some signs of improvement. However, the country would have to work hard to reach its peak as it did in the early 1980s. Overall, Japan has experienced a remarkable journey from being an economic powerhouse to facing stagnation. As Japan navigates through these hurdles, it becomes increasingly apparent that innovative solutions and strategic economic policies are necessary to revive its economic prowess. That's all we have for today. If you like this video, give us a big thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and turn on the notifications. And if you want to continue exploring the different economic landscape in the world, you might be interested in this video on the screen. That's all we have today. Thanks for watching.